Welcome back. This is the Sweet Hometowns podcast, featuring a lot of Main Street, Alabama fun stuff. So we're still kind of going through some basic steps of what Main Street is, and then I promise we'll get into the individual towns. But a lot of times I will have communities reach out to me and ask me questions on how do we get started, how do we make things different. And for me, when we come into a community, one of the biggest things that I see is if I see both the public side and the private side being engaged, like singing out of the same songbook that we talked about on the last podcast, understanding that this area is important to us and we want it to be different. And we know that there's nobody else coming in to save us. We've got to figure out how to do this ourselves. When I see that kind of interaction, that's when I know that we're going to be able to move things forward. So part of it gets with that strategy and the vision and how you think about the projects or initiatives that you want to move forward with. A lot of times when a community very first comes on, they are wrapped around a particular problem area, a dilapidated building or building a white elephant building, in some cases they call it. But you really need to look at the entire flow of the area and see how things are going to help not just one, but a variety. A lot of times I will also have communities reach out to me and say, we just want it to look pretty. And pretty is great. It's fun for a while, but it doesn't really entice your market to change. The whole build it and they will come thing doesn't work very often. So it's important that you work as equally in those 4 points as you possibly can. But as I mentioned again in the previous podcast, you have to look at that organizational capacity. Who is working together, agreeing that this is an important thing for our entire community and how do we get it to move forward. So having particular pieces is important, but lots of people at the table, lots of people talking about the quality of life, but also talking about their memories. So I'm going to give you a really good example. When we were working on our projects, where I was a local director for 10 years, we had a historic theater in the downtown. And it became more and more dilapidated over time. When I was a college student, we went to go see Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I have to admit, as 18, I was pretty impressed with all the fun things we were doing and throwing water and all the silly things you do with Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I think it really was my penance years later to be on the committee that was helping trying to save that theater because it closed after time because it was just not treated nicely. And it was a single screen theater, so it just wasn't going to compete with the big multiplex theaters. So time moves forward. I'm no longer a college student. I'm still living in this town, loving it, have moved into being the local Main Street director, and the poor theater has become more and more dilapidated, and they decided we're just going to tear it down because we need more parking. And in the Main Street world, we call that the P word. For the love. Typically, you don't need more parking. You just need how to manage the parking that you have. And you have to understand that at that time, our district was about 40% vacant. So we needed more parking when almost half of our buildings were empty. That math didn't work. So we went, let's not tear down one of the most historic buildings in our district for more parking that we don't need. Let's figure out what we can do with it. So a group of people came together and said, we love it. We're going to figure it out. Bought it for back to taxes, and then spent the next 7 years cleaned up pigeon poop and trying to save copper wiring, because those are the things you do when you love a building. But it was all part of the overall Main Street movement to make sure that the history that we had and buildings that were meant to last were going to stay there. The cool thing about this building is it opened in October of 1929. So if you think about that time frame, before the stock market crash, somebody wasn't watching the market. Nobody, it was really, this high sense of the time that we were in going, and then immediately things went south bad. So it had struggled. It was nice for a while, but it had struggled a lot over the years. So this is several years, clearly, 7 years forward, that we're trying to get this theater revitalized. But it took partnerships, and it took us time. It's a very Main Street story, and it took time for different groups of people to get involved and understand that they loved it. And they may have loved it because that's where they had their first kiss, or they may have loved it because that's where they met their best friend or whatever it is. The number of stories that we were told over the years while we were trying to fundraise for that theater, the number of marriages that came out of dates from that theater were just pretty fabulous and a lot of fun for us to talk through the process. And it's all about gathering those memories and the excitement of Main Street. So it took us time to get there. Then we had to figure out what we tend to call the capital stack. But it's all about how do we get everything to roll into a project because there isn't single source funding for anything. So going back to new communities coming in, that's usually what they ask me. What is my single source of income? And the answer is there isn't one. You're going to have to look at diversifying and figuring out how you're going to be able to move this forward over time. So the funding on that project was historic tax credits. It was new market tax credits. It was lots and lots and lots of fundraising, lots of stories, lots of, kissing in the balcony. I want to remember this and I'm going to give you $100 stories that took time for us to do. It took 7 years, but we stuck with it. We, like I said, did lots of cleaning out pigeon poop and all kinds of crazy stuff, lots of popcorn sales, lots of giving tours of a theater, hard hat tours, and it finally came to fruition. And it was just one of the most wonderful experiences I've had in my Main Street career of almost 27 years now, of having that opportunity to be in literally on the ground floor of a project all the way through when we reopened the doors and it became a very important component of our district. That's Main Street. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes effort. There are days you're going to look at it going, I do not want to go in there with the pigeons today, but you have to. It's just all of the discovery pieces of what you'll find along the way. And that's the best part of this job for me, is I get to see some behind the scenes stuff that a lot of folks don't get to see. And I'm just pretty nerdy. You probably figured that out. I'm nerdy enough to say, I want to see, I want to go in the basement and I want to see the main floor and I want to do the mezzanine. And yes, I'll crawl through this tunnel to see this. And I would love to see the upstairs. I am smart enough, though, that if the floor is spongy, that you walk around the edges. Don't go down the middle. Don't do it. That's not smart. So think about these buildings, but also think about when you're in your district, if you have a place that you love, walk through it, look at it, look at the buildings, and know that in almost every community I've been in, someone cared enough to put their name on a building because they wanted this place to last. And I think one of the really cool things about connecting the past to the future when you have young children and you're walking through a district is you can tell when the community was rich and you can tell when it struggled by the marks of the people who were there before. And that is worth hanging on to. And the lovely thing is, said, the highway goes both ways, the internet goes both ways. Let's figure out how to swing that pendulum back, because people really do value that personal customer service. And all of us, kind of went, back into our homes and our robes and our slippers during the pandemic. And what did we miss? We missed being together. And we missed having that camaraderie and that peace. And that's Main Street. That's always who we've been. We're always going to be the ones that in a community, it's the place that everybody should have ownership of. It should be the place where you feel comfortable having your homecoming parade, or how do you walk the streets with your now grown children going, this is where we went to do this and to do that, to do those things. And those memories should still be there, but you should still be looking to how you move to the future. So what do we work with in new communities is really that vision and that strategy and how they want to push it to where they want to go to next. I think the coolest thing about what we do is there is no one set of blueprint for every community. Everybody has their own path, their own route forward, their own things that are super important to them. We have worked in so many communities over the years, but there's one in particular for me here in Alabama that was a new thing for me, and I thought I'd seen it all, and that was Calera. And if you haven't been to Calera, Calera's lovely. I love it. I love where they're going, the energy, what was happening in their downtown. But it was the first community in my 20-plus years at that point where we said, maybe you start on the backside first. Well, we figure out what we're doing with the truck traffic and some of the other things that occur there. I mean, it's all part of commerce, and we don't want it to go away. We just need to figure out how we're going to work on it. And I remember thinking, I got to wrap my head around backdoor entrances before we do front doors, because it was just very different for us. But for them, it has been very successful and really a key for how they're moving their program forward. So if you haven't been to Clear lately, you need to go check them out. Go check out the Clear Courtyard and see the things that they're doing, and know that 5 years from now are going to be wildly different. Be ready and be prepared. I will talk about a lot of our different communities here in Alabama as we go through this podcast. I will always get the question, which is your favorite one? I don't play. I don't pick a favorite child. That's not the way you roll. I love them all equally. No, they're all great, and everyone's very different. But I do get asked that question a lot: which is your favorite one? Well, they're all so different, and they all have different challenges, and they all have different opportunities, and they all have different energy. That's what makes this job fun. So if you're interested in downtown redevelopment, Main Street is something for you to check out. But you got to get all the people involved. So you have to figure out how the public side of it is going to be involved. And that, for me, means the municipality, the government side. How are they going to be involved? Because it is a portion of the town's jobs and a portion of the sales tax and property tax. So it is an important economic driver in a community. And as you continue to move your program forward, it becomes even more important. I remember when we were 40% vacant and then we were to like 6 or 7% vacant, going to the power company and talking to them about the difference in the kilowatts sold. And they were just mind blown because I said, "Did you ever dream we'd be here?" And they said, "Nah, we thought, it was time to maybe write some of it off and not look at that as a growth area anymore." And it continues to be a growth area. As long as people care and your heart is there, it will always be a growth area. And it's always a place for entrepreneurs to get started. So October is Small Business, I got to say this right, Small Business Women's Month, there we go, Women's Small Business Month. And we just finished up our Alabama Spark. And Alabama Spark was a program found out of an SBA grant that we received with Main Street, Alabama. And it allowed us to have money that was displayed all across the state of Alabama. We touched almost 300 businesses with either a marketing grant or an implementation grant as they were buying new equipment or new product lines. It was just a wonderful experience. And we were also able to build up an education piece. And what we understood is entrepreneurs are usually hustling to the next thing. And they want this prize, but they're still got to feed their family and figure out how to get things moving. So trying to do educational stuff between 9 and 5 when they're doing their day job and trying to figure out how I'm paying the bills wasn't working. So ours are on demand and they're free. So if you are an entrepreneur and you're interested in this kind of stuff, send me an email. Can't believe I'm going to do this, but send me an email, mary@mainstreetalabama.org, and we'll see if we can't open up these classes for you to help you, because entrepreneurs make the world go around. And I'm excited to help an entrepreneur whenever we can. So those classes are open at any time. We have one that just talks generally about how to market your business and why marketing is important and different ways to do it in a cost-effective manner. The next one is really about HR. So when you are past that point of being that single person business and you're the chief cook and bottle washer, and you're getting to the point where you start to hire people, we have one on human resources and how do we hire people and how do you interview and how do we research and make sure we're getting the right people in play. And then we also have one on best business practices. What are the best ways for us to move forward? And then there's lots of other different opportunities out there as well. But those were the 3 main ones during Alabama Spark with our SBA grant that the businesses were required to take. And we had such good feedback from them talking about, I could take it at 3 o'clock when I'm worried about what the next step is, or I could take it on demand in between dropping my kids off in school before I had to go to the next place. So the on-demand piece is super important to us. So we'll continue that platform. But because it is Women's Small Business Month here across the United States, but in Alabama, we just happened to be able to celebrate it in a bigger way because all 5 of our finalists for our $25,000 final prize were women. Women-owned businesses, and it was exciting for us to see that and how these women are taking a step forward and moving things in a way they've not moved before, and being able to give them $3,000 to add a new product line or $25,000 to add an outdoor kitchen. All of those things made huge differences to these 5 women. And on the next podcast, I'll spend a little bit of time digging into each of those individuals and tell you their story. So just talking about Main Street in a strategy and a vision way, it's getting all of the people having an opportunity to think about how this is my district, my downtown, my neighborhood commercial district, whatever type of district you have, and how it can be better for all of us involved. So what type of activities do you want to have there? What type of businesses do you want to have? What type of products do you need? And who do you feel like when you're going to a chiropractor or a pharmacist or what everybody else, that person is trusting to you, that you feel confident with that business owner and that business model. That's what Main Street is. That's how we roll things forward.